So we are going to be looking at this sentence from page 103 of A Long Walk to Water. When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. So first, what does this sentence mean to you? How does this sentence add to your understanding of the guiding question? So the guiding question for this whole module has been, who are the lost children of Sudan and what is their story? Now, this refers to Naya. Now, Naya is not technically a lost child of Sudan because she did not go to a refugee camp. But I want you to keep in mind what you read about in the Lost Girls of Sudan article. And as we go through this language dive, think about how this sentence could also relate to the Lost Girls of Sudan. First, let's look at when at last. What does the word when tell us? When always refers to a time that something takes place. Why would she write at last? Let me give you a little bit of context for this sentence. Naya stared at her father. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. So at last implies that Naya did not speak right away. There was a time or a pause between when her father spoke and then Naya could not speak right away. So the author said, when at last, which lets us know as readers some time has passed. When at last she was able to speak. She refers to Naya. And as I said earlier, this chunk tells us that when Naya first heard her dad, she was not able to speak. Why was she unable to speak? Let's look again at our context. So keep in mind what's happening on page 103. Naya has just learned that a school is being built in her village. With the well here, no one will have to go to the pond anymore, so all the children will be able to go to school. Naya stared at her father. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. When at last she was able to speak. So she was unable to speak because she just got this news and she's processing it. She doesn't really know how to react. She's processing what she just heard. It was only in a whisper. What does it refer to? It refers to how she speaks. When she speaks, it's only in a whisper. It tells us that her voice is quiet. Why would she include the word only? When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. That implies that even whispering was hard for Naya to do. Like, she was so taken aback by the news that she just heard, she can barely even speak. It was only a whisper. That was the least that she could do, was a whisper. So if we think about reading this text out loud, let's try to read it with a whisper. Naya stared at her father. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. So notice how I dropped my voice there. That kind of implies this emotion that Naya is feeling. All the children, Papa? The girls too? So when I'm reading this text out loud, this is letting me know when I actually say Naya's words, I need to say them in a whisper. So now look at your sentence frame number 1 on your quiz and try to complete this sentence frame. Copy and complete. Now let's reconstruct. When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. How could you say this in a different order? You could flip it and say it was only in a whisper when at last she was able to speak. You just flip the two clauses around. Why might they be unable to speak? So let's think now about that connection to the lost girls of Sudan. Naya stared at her father. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. When at last she was able to speak, it was only in a whisper. All the children, Papa? The girls, too? So, why would she be so unsettled, so shocked at the idea of a school being built in her village? Think about Naya. Her whole life has been spent walking to water twice a day. We've seen this in the small glimpses in every chapter about how Naya has to walk back and forth, back and forth. Her whole day is spent doing that. She's not able to go to school because of this great responsibility. But now that they have water in their village, she is able to go to school and get an education, even the girls. So consider how she would be feeling at this moment. That's why she's unable to speak. She's so overwhelmed and shocked at what she's hearing that she doesn't even know what to say. So let's think back again to that question. Who are the lost children of Sudan and what is their story? How does water play into the story of these lost children? And how does the fact that Naya's village have water add to their story? What's going to happen now? Sentence frame number 2, copy and complete.